If you cross what used to be the Stewart Avenue level crossing with the railway line here in Newcastle West, just to the west of that old level crossing, you may have noticed some digging going on. About a dozen people, I'm thinking, in high-vis gear were there with literally buckets and spades and big sieves, digging down, taking the earth up, pouring it through the sieves. We thought, I think I can see archaeology going on here, and we were right. They were doing some archaeological digs to see what they could find. Josh Symons was there with them. He's an archaeologist with a company called Artefact Heritage, and he's with us now. G'day, Josh.
Hi, Paul. How's it going?
Okay. You finished your work?
Yes, we just finished yesterday, actually. So,
How long were you there for?
we were there for almost exactly 4 weeks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Why were you there? What caused you to dig?
Yeah, so basically it was sort of Aboriginal Heritage investigations for the Wickham Transport Interchange. So we were there to basically look at the sand layers there. So we had a team of archaeologists and representatives of the local Aboriginal community methodically digging salvage pits and sifting through the soil to retrieve Aboriginal artefacts, which I think the digging and sieving is something you mentioned that a lot of people probably saw us do. So yeah.
What did you find?
Yeah, so over the last month, we've retrieved more than 1,000 Aboriginal artefacts from excavation, and we've found that there are likely to have been several major changes to the environment at Wickham over that time.
I was thinking that. It looks like a lot of stuff has happened in that area. It's hardly, untouched prime, archaeological territory, I would have thought.
Yeah.
How far down did you have to go before you found anything?
Yeah, so our pits, just to give some idea of the size, so our biggest pits were 6 meters long, 3 meters wide, and we went down to a maximum of around 1.5 meters. In terms of like the more recent disturbance to the area, like services and the rail corridor and that sort of thing, it's actually in a lot of places it's actually fairly superficial, like only down to maybe half a meter depth. And what we find is that beneath that is actually, in many places, just beautifully intact sand layers with sort of still preserved evidence of Aboriginal occupation associated.
So you go down, if you were somewhere in Newcastle West, particularly in your case on that rail corridor, but you imagine in adjacent areas as well. If you've got a house somewhere in Wickham, you could imagine that you go down about half a metre and thereafter you could potentially find, what did you say, thousands of Aboriginal artefacts.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a really amazing area actually, and just the fact that the sort of different phases over time is kind of just preserved. So like as changes occur, it sort of occurs on top of the old one. So it's kind of like a layer cake kind of thing. So as we dig down, we can see those different phases, and also we can sort of associate Aboriginal artefacts with each of those phases or not, as the case may be. So,
a lot of the land around here has been reclaimed.
Yes.
Obviously, the land where you're digging can't have been reclaimed.
No. Yeah. So some of the I'm not sort of outside that area. I'm not. Obviously, the foreshore. Some of the foreshore may have been reclaimed, but what we're finding at the Wickham Transport Interchange project area is that there's some beautifully intact sand profiles buried beneath the rail line. Basically.
What kinds of things did you find?
Yeah, so the deepest layers are really very interesting. We're finding that most of the Aboriginal artefacts we retrieved were from the deepest deposits. It looks like there was a sandbar there associated with a waterway that passed through. And a lot of the artefacts we've retrieved were associated with that sandbar, and this suggests that that location was fairly heavily used by Aboriginal people in the area.
When you say a sandbar associated with a waterway, do you mean a shallow area across like a mouth where a waterway would come into what we now call the harbour, but was then just the river? So something like a creek coming into the river, a shallow bit at the end. Is that what you mean by a sandbar?
Yeah, so it could have been something like that. So basically, it's sort of like a raised sandy area, which we're not seeing a lot of evidence of a lot of plant life associated with it. So it could have, obviously as the waterway moved over time, which it did, we found that later on that sandbar disappeared. So it was a very sort of definite phase of that area. So yeah.
But we still haven't found out what you found. What kinds of things did you find?
Yeah. So the Aboriginal artefacts. So the stone tools, mainly stone tools. So basically, sort of raw material from the area. So there's a lot of volcanic material that's found naturally in the Newcastle area, like even out at Nobby's Head, for example. Aboriginal people sort of acquired that material and then shaped it into specific tools to
mainly by sharpening it.
Yeah, so sort of So I guess knocking bits of stone off what we call a core, so like a main sort of a piece of stone that they would knock flakes off, so knock bits of stone off, and then those little smaller bits of stone that were knocked off might have been reshaped further. So for example, some of those bits of stone might have been shaped specifically to haft onto a spear. Some of them may have been, sort of larger flakes designed to have, sort of a sharper cutting edge to perform like more immediate tasks.
Yeah.
Cutting. It's
is that remarkable, or would you were you sort of expecting if you dig in a place like this, you're going to find that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, it is quite like it is something that we would expect to find. I think in that area, it's more the kind of preserved layers that are there, and the fact that we can really clearly associate those artifacts with the changes in the environment over time. So I think that it just shows that area has been sort of frequently and heavily used by Aboriginal people in the area for a long period of time, and throughout a lot of changes to the environment. So.
Okay. What happens now? What happens to those your excavation site, and what happens to the things you've dug up?
Yeah. So basically, our pits. The immediate thing for our pits is that they'll be sort of filled in, and those fences that people can see around them will be removed. The artefacts themselves will be recorded by archaeologists. So each one, the sort of the length and width and weight of each artefact and what type of artefact it is will be recorded and put into a database, and then that'll be sort of analysed in our report. Following that, that information will go to the local Aboriginal community groups and Transport for New South Wales.
What happens to the things, to the actual tools?
So the artefacts, that's going to be subject to ongoing consultation with the local Aboriginal community, but it is likely that there will be a return to that area, so there's likely to be a sort of specific place within the Wickham Transport Interchange project area where they'll be potentially reburied, and
So returned to country.
Yes, returned to country. Yes, yeah, and there may be on talking with the community further, it may be that there'll be some interpretive signage established somewhere nearby, so that can provide information to the sort of the public in that area about what we found. So.
Really interesting, Josh. I guess you do this a fair bit. As an archaeologist, that's probably the main kind of thing that you do. Very interesting to talk to you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you.
Archaeologist with a company called Artefact Heritage,